Jake, we got you, player. All right, so here's Bitcoin. All right, gentlemen. So we had been talking about this inside of the Discord. We had mentioned this already. I put up a chart as well. So we were expecting this liquidity to get taken on Bitcoin. So once we broke out of this range, it was clear, okay, we're coming back down to get this liquidity. Do one in the last final flush on Bitcoin. That's exactly what happened. I'll even put it on a lower time frame. Okay. So, all right, we were ranging inside of this range. We were saying here, there's no signal, no signal, no signal, no signal, no signal. Finally, we get this puke. This was the lowest close Bitcoin had in recent time. So within these last couple of weeks. Then once we got that poor close, it was actually on the daily. Yeah, this was the lowest daily close we had in this entire range. So you see nothing had closed as low as this daily candle right here at 91.5. That was a bearish daily close. So that was a bad candle. As soon as we got that bad daily close, you see what happens. Puke right outside the range, nuke all the way down. We had this liquidity marked out. We finally swept it. So we finally got this liquidity. We took it out. So on Bitcoin, here are the two things that are going to happen from here now. So we could either continue to puke and come down, which is possible, and fill this FVG, so fair value gap, which would be from where we wicked down, it would be like right here. Whoops. So you're looking at 76, 75K. Okay. Is that good? Would that be fun? Nope. But you guys can already see how on most of the altcoins that we're holding, the downside is more muted with this puke on Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can see, because most of the downside has already been realized on altcoins. So we're not puking as hard as we had. Like the altcoins, the good ones are pretty much as bottom out as they're going to be. So if this happens, it's not like your portfolio is going to blow up much further than what it already has if you've been holding it since the top. So, but this would be as far down as I see Bitcoin coming unless something's wrong. So this would be the fair value gap, FVG. So we got to come back down, fill this before inevitably doing something like this. Okay. And then curling back up. Okay. Now, let me also show you something on the RSI. So on the daily, on the RSI on Bitcoin, this is also the most oversold we've been since I had the line, yeah, way back here. So the last time we were this oversold on the RSI daily for Bitcoin was August of 2023. So it's been years since we've even been this oversold on Bitcoin. So that's why I'm not convinced necessarily that we have to do the complete FVG, fair value gap fill. We could be just good with this liquidity, kind of hang down around here for a little bit before sending up in March or April. I would say March, based off of what we're timing with this liquidity cycle. But we've not been this oversold since 2023, which is important to realize. That's a long time. That's fucking that's years. It's almost 2 years since it's been that oversold. So I have this drawn out on Bitcoin. So I like that. That's good for me. I like that it's been this oversold. We finally got that last capitulation. Could be a little bit lower. Yeah, maybe. But I don't see much more downside after this. So this is how oversold we were back in 23. Now, so that's the RSI. Now, here's what we want to show with this global liquidity index that we were talking about now. So if I had this indicator on Bitcoin, so let's see how correlated we are to this global liquidity cycle, okay? So that chart that Logan was just showing the cycles so that we come down, liquidity's low from this index, and then we come up, liquidity's high from the index, Bitcoin, crypto, all this other shit starts pumping. So if you take a look at this, okay, could even put it on, do it like this. Let's do it from, let's say, last cycle. So down below is the index that we're talking about. So this is the Federal Reserve, this is the European Central Bank, this is the Japanese Bank, all together. What's their liquidity together? Okay, so here's this liquidity index. As this is moving up, that means more money is getting injected into the markets, into the economy from these central banks around the world. So you see here, from October 23 up to December 23. You see a 4.3% increase in liquidity over the course of 60 days. Okay. So you see this come up for about 2 months. Okay. Almost 2 months. And then what do you see happen over here on Bitcoin over the course of almost 2 months? You see it pump up, right? This is front running, or Bitcoin is lagging what this liquidity is doing, this index is doing, right? So you see the index, this liquidity move up, then Bitcoin moves up and other markets move up. Here, you bottom here, you move up for 3 months. What happens after on Bitcoin? Right? It's lagged. I would even argue probably from here. Yeah, because this is just ranging. You get this breakout on Bitcoin. Look, it's lagged. Then we come down on this liquidity. What does Bitcoin do? Comes back down. What's this liquidity doing now? It's moving back up. So what do you think is going to happen on Bitcoin lagged? Maybe we come down here, move back up, right? So you want to explain why that relationship may be, Logan, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it makes sense that it lags behind because, yeah, the global liquidity index, like I mentioned, it's putting a lot of confidence into investors because they see the United States government and then, economies around the world injecting liquidity, which shows that they're trying to expand the economy. And it's also showing that they have confidence that, there's not a recession or something extreme that's going to be coming down the pipe more than likely. So it's establishing confidence in investors. And I think that usually, especially lately with how volatile President Trump has shown to be, it takes a little bit of time for it to catch up. So once that liquidity starts getting injected, people want to make sure that it's going to sustain and that it's going to last and that it's not just, an overnight thing where all of a sudden some black swan event happens, quantitative tightening gets put back on, and we get flipped upside down. So it makes sense that it lags a little bit, especially too because Bitcoin and crypto in general is pretty far down the risk curve. So I would imagine that whenever global liquidity starts getting injected, they start loosening up a little bit and easing up on the tightening, that people initially are investing into stocks. And then as global liquidity continues to get injected, they start to roll down the risk curve into stuff like Bitcoin and Ethereum and these other cryptocurrencies. So the fact that it's lagging makes complete sense to me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, we had the past 2 or 3 months since, November or, since September, October, we had it moving down on the global liquidity index. So then since really looks like it was about the time of the inauguration, mm-hmm. Global liquidity index reversed and has been moving up since then. So I would imagine that around the world, there was probably a lot of uncertainty with the election. They were waiting to see what happens, making sure he gets elected, probably assuming there was going to be some kind of black swan event with the election going on, which I was kind of expecting to happen too. And then once he actually got inaugurated, yeah, it almost called the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. The day of the inauguration, basically.
Yeah, and then since then, countries are probably having a lot more confidence. I know that there's been some instability and uncertainty with the tariffs and a couple other things, like Trump's shown to be pretty unpredictable and pretty volatile. But yeah, I think over time that stuff, starts to, I don't know what the right way to explain it is. Like people start to, I think, kind of price it in. Right. Like they know that he's a volatile president, and then the moves that he makes and the decisions that he chooses to do start to lose power a little bit as far as the effect that it has on the market.
Right.
Like I think it's kind of like
the boy who cried, like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like we kind of talked about it before with tier one listings. We were saying that maybe it gets a little bit diluted over time. Once so you start to get too many coins getting listed to tier one exchanges, it starts to lose its value and hype a little bit. And then people really aren't reacting to it and aping into it as hard as they used to.
Hmm.
I feel like it's kind of the same thing with his unpredictable moves as people start to panic about him and buy into him a little bit less, and it just kind of becomes business as usual. Um, but yeah, I mean, with Bitcoin lagging, obviously we had a little bit of a pump on the election date, especially on Bitcoin. I know it went to like 110, just over 110, hit a new all-time high, and then really has just been puking since then.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's lagging. So
Right, which makes sense, right? Because we see the liquidity index puke here. This is why you're getting this laggard move on Bitcoin. So we knew, if we're watching, if we're paying attention to this GLI, and it's Bitcoin, we were measuring it out. Bitcoin is lagging about 2 months behind because it takes time for these things to go into effect and affect markets. So as this started puking, it's in September and October, and it's creating this downtrend. We got to be in our head saying, okay, hold on a second. This thing's coming down in October and in November. Okay, that means in around December or November, then Bitcoin and altcoins must be topping out. And that's exactly what happened, because this is going to be leading what this market is doing. So now we bottomed out and we create this base and we start to move back to the upside. Yeah, we're getting this downside on Bitcoin and altcoins right now, but this is going to follow what this liquidity index is doing, which is if this is pumping back up, you're going to see Bitcoin start to curl out here and move back up. It's not going to continue to go down and go into this, prolonged bear market. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to see this start to reverse as this liquidity goes back up, flow back into markets. People are going to go back down the risk curve. NASDAQ's going to go into price discovery. At some point, whenever IWM goes into price discovery, that's when you get your alt season. We still haven't had alt season this cycle yet. We still haven't had Bitcoin dominance puke this cycle yet. The cycle's not topped. It's not topped. It's not patience. It's going to happen. So you're going to see this Bitcoin start to roll back up, and then people are like, oh shit, it's happening again. And then we're going to get that next move to the upside. Bitcoin has been moving up and gone into price discovery in unfavorable liquidity conditions, which Logan has a chart that we'll probably get to here in a second that shows that how Bitcoin's been able to move up as GLI has either moved sideways or moved down, which is huge. Now you get this GLI, this thing to start pumping up. What's Bitcoin and these altcoins going to do? That's when you see them to start to fly, because now they're in favorable conditions. So let me get some of these drawings out of here. So this is on what it looks like on Bitcoin. Now let's take a look at Ethereum, okay? So, yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, if you want me to, I can even show that chart real quick, just while we're still talking about Bitcoin.
Yep, let's do that. Let me unshare my screen. All right, you're good.
So I know I had a couple different ones, but this one does a pretty good job of it. And I have a couple other ones that we can show a little bit later, but I think this one does a pretty good job. So this is on let me zoom out on it a little bit because it has the date ranges listed. So this is on a way bigger time frame. Like the chart that we were just looking at, that was showing, 2024 into 2025. So like you can see that it's clearly been in a pretty aggressive downtrend since it topped out at the end of 2021, which was when exactly when Bitcoin had topped out as well. So it called this top almost perfectly. It did call it perfectly.
Yeah.
So, on that chart we were just looking at, it showing that, Bitcoin or the global liquidity index has been recovering, which you can see that right down here.
Zooming in real quick. A little bit. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so you can see it's been recovering a little bit here, which is what we were just looking at. But in the grand scheme of things, when you zoom out, in these conditions before, like back in the 2016, 2017 bull market, Bitcoin was moving in accordance with the GLI the entire time. So it had this wind in its sails from the jump. And like we showed on the global liquidity index cycle, that move in 2016, 2017 was off of the typical cycle that it tends to follow. So the move was way less dramatic on GLI than what it typically is, just because it wasn't aligning correctly. And then throughout the bear market, from like 2017, end of 2017 into the 2020, GLI is pretty much flatlined, just kind of ranging down. And then we get this huge up only spike in global liquidity for about a year and a half.
Hmm.
So this was from around the time of the election, which again, elections cause a ton of uncertainty, not just in the US, but everyone, we're on the global stage. Everyone's paying attention to what's going on in the United States. They all pay attention to the US elections.
Hmm.
Ton of uncertainty. People are de-risking going into the election because they don't know what's going to happen. Election gets, done, taken care of. Boom, COVID happens. They're injecting a
Tons of money.
fuckload of
Yep.
liquidity to try and save all these businesses and save the economy. So we're in an up only chart for a year and a half, which was perfect conditions for Bitcoin. I mean, that's when we saw altcoins do record breaking numbers because everything, they're just pumping, 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 pumping money. People got no problem rotating all the way down the risk curve as far as they can go and just maximizing profits. And then end of 2021, pretty much called the top perfectly on Bitcoin. And then we've been down only for 3 years, which makes sense because there was a ton to recover from. Like we spent, the US and all the countries around the world spent trillions of dollars trying to recover from the COVID pandemic and what that did to the economy. So it makes sense that we were going to be in an extended period of quantitative tightening and cutting down on government spending and, cracking the debt ceiling, cracking our heads off the debt ceiling. And I know that right now they can't decide on a limit to increase the debt ceiling to, which once that gets passed and we're able to start printing money again, this shit's going to fly. But I mean, you see like Bitcoin still recovered from the lows over the bear market,
Hmm.
which looking at this, I mean, it had gotten down to like 13, 14,000. I'm assuming this was probably in like 2022.
Yep.
And then we've been pretty much up only for about 2 years. And then obviously now Bitcoin, is at all-time highs, broke out of the previous, range cycle that it was in. And it's done all of this without global liquidity index in its sales. So, just from publicity and sentiment being positive enough and getting enough attention from, global leaders all around the world, like, I mean, the, president of El Salvador and Trump getting behind Bitcoin and just having so many people backing it and it being, so many people being bullish on it, it's been able to perform as well as it has and have the strength that it's shown without GLI moving in its favor. But this is why we're preaching that the bull run really hasn't happened yet because until this chart bottoms out, which to me, this looks damn near bottomed out,
Hmm.
and it just had its first breakout above this line. This is from a couple weeks ago, but really its first definitive breakout above this line that it's had since it called the top in 2021.